And now I will introduce today's two special guests. In 1971, at the age of 22, Margaret Trudeau became the youngest First Lady in the world when she married Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau. She was immediately thrust into the public limelight, becoming one of the most watched and talked about women in the country. She led a rich and interesting life, traveling the nation and the world extensively and raising 3 sons. But life in the public eye was not entirely satisfying or entirely her own. When asked about her role as the wife of one of the most prominent men in the country, Margaret Trudeau famously responded, "I want to be more than a rose in my husband's lapel." After leaving the marriage in 1977, Margaret went on to lead an even more interesting life as she became a photographer, an actress, a television host, and an author of 2 books, Beyond Reason and Consequences, and I think there's another one coming out next year. She remarried and raised 2 more children, and more recently she became a grandmother, and a very proud one by all reports. Congratulations. Though she's led a very public life, Margaret Trudeau has also had a very private life, and for many years, a hidden one. She has suffered from the debilitating effects of bipolar disorder for all of her adult life. Now, after receiving medical treatment that has given her life balance and happiness, she is a strong and effective advocate for mental health issues, helping people overcome the stigma of mental illness and promoting appropriate treatment. She is working with the Royal Ottawa Hospital to raise funds for their new hospital and raise public awareness of mental health issues, and she also sits on the Executive Advisory Board of the UBC Mental Health Institute. And she's active in other causes as well. She's the honorary president of WaterCan, a charitable Canadian non-governmental agency dedicated to helping the poorest communities in developing countries build sustainable water supply and sanitation services. Our other guest is also a pretty amazing woman. Valerie Pringle is one of the country's best-known and respected media professionals. She started her career at age 19 as a student reporter at CFRB Radio in Toronto, after graduating from Radio and Television Arts at Ryerson in 1974. Since then, she's moved from one success to another. For many years, she was the face and the voice of CBC TV News and Current Affairs program Midday. She went on to co-host CTV's Canada AM and then W5. Valerie has co-produced and hosted a number of documentaries for Discovery Channel, for CTV Travel, and for Vision TV. She was appointed a member of the Order of Canada for her contributions to the communications field. And she's also very involved in a number of not-for-profit organizations. She chairs the board of the Trans-Canada Trail and is on the foundation boards of the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health, Women's College Hospital, and the Canadian Broadcast Museum. But it's not because she's an award-winning journalist or an outstanding volunteer that Valerie Pringle joins us today. She's here as a mother and as a family member whose experience with mental illness comes very close to home. Her daughter, Catherine, now 28, has suffered from severe panic and anxiety attacks, and Valerie has been a very public spokesperson about her family's experience in seeking help and finding support. Valerie and Margaret, I'd like to welcome you, and I'd like to ask you to join us, please, on stage to share with our audience your experiences.
After you.
After you, dear.
It's a great honor and a pleasure to be here speaking about this topic particularly, which, as you've just heard, is very important to both Margaret and me. And I'll be delighted, and Margaret would be, obviously, to answer your questions. And if you want to fill out things, we'll just get to them. Try not to turn our backs too much to you over there, because we're focused a little bit this way. I'll start by saying, because we have personal stories, but we do want to get a message across and stick to the topic, which is children and youth mental health as well. So we'll try not to stray off topic too much. So I think by starting, I might say it's interesting that in the introduction we heard about your bipolar disorder being with you all your adult life. But you
Yes.
say, as you look back now, it started earlier, which 80% of psychiatric illnesses do.
I would suspect so. We thought that the onset of my bipolar condition was after the birth of my second son with postpartum depression. Then it was called baby blues. And there really wasn't very effective treatment. I remember the psychiatrist wanted to get me back to being a good prime minister's wife. I sort of felt like a broken car that needed something fixed, but it wasn't the right approach. But looking back, as I have been, and talking a lot because I'm working on a book on mental health, I was probably always bipolar. I think the words that come to mind that my family remembers about me, vivacious, capricious, life of the party, moody, quiet, prone to tears. Bipolar is an exaggeration of emotions. For those who don't understand what bipolar is, it's a chemical imbalance in the brain. There's not enough serotonin, which drives you into deep depression, and there's too much dopamine, which flies you up into the highest euphoria and, for me, madness. And I've been there a couple of times, and I never want to go back up there again. And so I have had to learn how to live with my bipolar condition because it's a lifelong condition. What I had is, in my childhood, though, being raised in the 50s, I was very, very lucky to be born in North Vancouver to a fine father and a really good mom. And I was raised well. I had 4 sisters. You remember in the 50s, we didn't have any of the television and the toys that we had then. We were sent out to play. I played a lot. I had to eat a very strict diet of my mother's food, and I had to eat it. That was that. But she did also give us every morning, I remembered from daylight saving when it started or stopped, till the next April, halibut liver oil or cod liver oil tablets. Now that's one of the things that is in my vitamin regime for my mental health. That's one of my supplements is omega fish oil, and it's very important. So I was given fish oil, and I was given a balanced diet. We certainly didn't have junk food. There was no McDonald's around the corner, and I had to play a lot. I did get well educated, of course, being a Canadian girl. The schools were great. I had a good life. I think the balance of my childhood, of the way that I was raised, having to do chores, having to work, having to take care of my own world in my family. I mean, we had a community in our family, a clan, my father called it. That helped balance, there's no question. But I do remember when I was over-emotional, my mother would say, Margaret, just go to your room and you can come out when you have a better attitude. Well, I ask now, what was in my little girly room that could have helped me deal with these huge emotions that were flooding me all the time? These wild thoughts, these big dreams, these small worries. I mean, I just was always flooded, and when you get manic, you're racing as well. So I'm sure that didn't help. And my sister called my mom when I first had postpartum depression and said, Mom, one of us should go back to Ottawa. Marg's in trouble. I think she needs some help. And my mom said, you mean a psychiatrist? No. They just blame the mother. Mom.
She may not have been wrong.
Mom, we did. Sorry, Mom. We did. We do. I do. My psychiatrist does blame you. Because while you well-raised me and you gave me a wonderful education and my IQ from my genes was very high, you forgot about my EQ, my emotional intelligence, my learning how to deal with these huge emotions that my sisters didn't seem to have, and I had. And it was always trying to suppress it. One of my psychiatrists told me that he felt that depression is really suppressed anger, that you're not getting out and you just get deeper and deeper into feeling hopeless and unable to fight. And anger actually is very good. I was never allowed to be angry. I was always told to be a pleasing little girl. That was another part of it, too.
I was stunned, I remember, when you told your story and came out publicly in the newspaper about your diagnosis, that in this day and age, it had taken so long.
I was
How
diagnosed
in
early.
your life it took so long for you to
was
get the proper help and treatment?
I was diagnosed, it was Stephen Smith, who was the head of the Liberal Party in Ontario at the time. He was also a psychiatrist. And he wrote a very kind letter to Pierre after one of my acting out, manic, kind of totally irresponsible, inappropriate, and bad behaviors.
Did it involve singing?
Maybe the Rolling Stones. I don't know. Anyway, whatever.
Singers.
Whatever. A lot of singing and dancing. Whatever. He said, you know, I think maybe Margaret might be suffering from manic depression, which is what it was called. And that was followed up with a nice meeting in a garden in Ottawa with a psychiatrist and talking. And of course, he found a perfectly delightful, lovely mummy of little babies and someone who seemed to be doing just fine. I was very, very good at masking what was really going on, because I had been raised to be a pleasing person and to not show emotion and to not rock the boat, so to speak. So when I do rock the boat, it's a big rock because it's not, not usual. Anyway, it rocks. So I think that I had that early diagnosis. I even was put in hospital. Pierre put me in hospital when I was Prime Minister's wife. I wasn't put into a psychiatric ward. It was about the time that One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was that. And I...
We'll get to stigma.
And I said, if you think I'm crazy, then put me in a psychiatric ward, not this executive suite for men executives with prostate and urinary tract problems.
Or alcoholism, which they were probably, you know, tucked away in there as well.
Anyway, no, I tried treatment, but really the breakthrough came for people suffering from bipolar in 1985, around about then when the first antidepressants, serotonin uptake drugs, were put on the market, because it did the one thing that was missing always in me when I would get so depressed, and I didn't even know what serotonin was, none of us did, and I didn't know why I couldn't get back on my feet when I got knocked down. I just got deeper and deeper into depression, as depressed people do, pushing everybody away, blaming everybody else because of my problems. Oh, Pierre's fault, the nanny's fault, someone else's fault, not mine. Running away, trying to escape it, self-medicating with marijuana, because I like it better than alcohol.
You've said that marijuana was probably a really huge mistake in terms of really harming you.
Oh, yes. Every time I was hospitalized, 2 times I was seriously hospitalized, had followed quite a lot of self-medication with the magic herb, because I thought that that was the way I could lift myself out of the sadness, out of the depression, because it is a euphoric drug, and it's something that I'd been, since the 60s, it was our choice. I mean, drug of choice. It was always that, it was there. And
but it probably made things much worse for you.
It triggers you into mania. Yeah. It has a propensity to it. There's not a direct cause, but they do say, and this study didn't come out until, maybe 6 or 7, or maybe more than that, 10 years ago, that there really is a link between cannabis and, obviously there's a link between cocaine and manic, because that's what cocaine, any stimulants will push you up. But we thought that marijuana was sort of a benign, happy choice instead of alcohol. No, it's not a happy choice at all.
Can you take marijuana or alcohol or anything now? Or?
Oh, yes, I could, all of it, yeah.
That's human. Really good news.
I'm human. No. Everything in moderation, but no, marijuana. No, I have to face that I can't. Alcohol is no problem, because I've never had an alcohol problem. The problem is not the alcohol. The problem is not the drugs. Finally, they got it right and started putting mental health and addiction together in one place, instead of saying, your problem is that you're an alcoholic. Not your problem is you've got a mental issue that you're not treating, that you haven't faced, and you're trying to self-medicate and drown your problems with alcohol or escape it. It's just your way out. And that, some people use food. Mm-hmm. Some people will get so overweight so that they don't have to face being, they just eat till they can't stop eating. Well, they can never stop eating, or taking drugs, or alcohol. They're the symptom of the problem, not the problem.
I was listening to you talk about your mom, and I mean, the person who's become a poster child for mental health along with me, if I can call myself that, is my daughter Catherine, who is spectacular. Should be here today, but she's very busy working. But this is a cause that she has championed enormously too. And if I think through her life, you know, she'd get overwrought.
Yes.
For a skating test, for a test. Yeah. She had a mild eating disorder. At one point, she was concerned enough about her mood swings that she said she thought she needed to see someone. I remember taking her to the wonderful Diane Sachs, and she had a conversation, and this was a teenage thing.
You're advocating for her. You're doing everything right there.
Well, that was good, but it did get to a point that it got worse, the crying, and through university and exams, I'd get her dad on the phone.
Fun to be around.
You'd start the bromides, because I've never really experienced that at all. I mean, I can say I've never had a panic attack. You know, everyone's been nervous, but you know, this was just off the charts. Her friends were very good at helping her through it. But when she finally started her first real job, she was living at home then, and fell apart. Like she just was a quivering, crying ball on a bed. And know, like, oh, you'll get better. Look your record. Look how good you are. Look how fabulous you are. These words were pretty useless. It's like your mom telling you to go and get a good attitude or whatever. Mm-hmm. So what was interesting then is that finally, I guess, we realized she had to get some help. She went to a GP. She got antidepressants. She's on Effexor. This was not great news for her, and I suppose it isn't for anybody. You go, oh, great. Crazy pills for me, what's wrong with me? And then some therapy was advised that was more like counseling, which had a lot of questions about mothers. Anyway, I did call David Goldblum at CAMH at that point, whom I knew. And he saw Catherine, and he talked about cognitive behavior therapy, which has been really helpful with panic and anxiety.
There isn't a pill. Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a pill that'll get you on firm ground like everybody else is. At least you can think clearly, or maybe not that clearly, depending what the pill is, but at least you're on the firm ground. And then you've got to start the therapy. You've got to start talking. You've got to get rid of all of that hate of your self-loathing that came from the mistakes you made. You've got to get rid of your fear of ever being able to contribute. You've got to get rid of your jealousy that you're not normal and other people seem to have such a nice life, and you have to get rid of your anger that, how come, why me with a mental illness?
I know,
why
and
do
it's
I
forever.
have to take drugs forever? I had one psychiatrist get up at a question and answer period after I'd given my speech, and she said, Margaret, I seem to think that you've recovered from your bipolar condition. Don't you know that there is no recovery? I said to her, oh, well, I guess I'm cured from the fear of my bipolar condition, because I know what it is. I self-monitor. I know how to deal with my emotions finally. Maybe I'm just finally a grown-up. And that is the problem with our youth and our teenagers, is for them to have the maturity to accept the hard choices. And taking medication and being compliant is a hard one. Most of the medication has side effects that teenagers will be particularly unhappy about. Mm-hmm. Decreased libido and fat.
No, it's something to deal with.
You have to be so strong to know that this is not forever. The medication antidepressants don't have to be forever. What is the antidepressant doing? It's raising your serotonin level and keeping it up. Okay, how do we get serotonin? We get serotonin from exercise. We get serotonin from laughing at a joke. We get serotonin, of course, from sex. We get serotonin from eating good food, from sleeping well, from being healthy. Most of the people in this room, a third of you won't have good serotonin because a third of Canadians are depressed. A third of you, and the rest of the two-thirds, and a third of you only a third of the third of you will ever admit it and get help. That's your problem, because you could be so much better so quickly if you only reached out and said, help.
Well, just to finish about Kath, one of the things that I was so proud of, we were, her dad and I, and are so proud of her, that after this particularly bad episode, and she couldn't work during that time, a friend of hers, who will never forget the kindness, because I mean, even as her mom, I couldn't kind of get her that step to work the first day. And it was a friend named Heather Armstrong who literally phoned her and said, get in the shower and call me, and then get out. okay, get dressed, call me. Get in your car, call me. I'll meet you outside the office. And met her, walked her into the office. And she was just, you know, oh, they're going to think what do I say? What do I say? And everyone's going to look at me. And it was so embarrassing to have missed work because of this. And she'd said to her dad the night before, what do I say? And he said, tell the truth. And so she went in, and everyone's going, oh, Catherine, you know, where have you been? What's up? And she said, well, I've been having panic and anxiety issues. And then went to her boss and said that, you know, that's the issue. And everyone was like, oh, my sister, my mother, my brother, you know, like it was gone and it was known. Yeah. There was no shame of it. And that was something we were hugely proud of. And just to finish that story, as I became more involved with CAMH on the foundation board and in the campaign cabinet, we had, mostly because of Mike Wilson, who I think is such a hero, having spoken out about his son's suicide, which was very brave, James Bartleman, Ron Ellis. These are really brave, wonderful people. And they'd said to me, would you do a public awareness campaign? And I thought, Lord, in my family, alcoholics, drug abuse. I mean, who doesn't? This is everybody's family. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And don't hide it. Don't not talk about it. It's everywhere, and it's time we shed some light. And I said, well, Catherine would agree to be talked about in this ad, but it's sort of lame, you know, panic and anxiety disorder is sort of low on psychiatry, schizophrenia, other things that are way more serious. And surely there's no stigma attached. Who's not on antidepressants, or, you know, who doesn't know about this? So I mean, I said, but I'll do it for sure if it helps. And they put up these bus shelter ads and radio ads. And I found I was so wrong. There wasn't a day that went by that people weren't coming up to me and saying, I've never spoken about this. I'm far too ashamed. I can't admit. You know, it's a personality failing. It's their flaw.
Character flaw.
And kids, you know, they're afraid to have that label, and they don't want to name it.
I say the shame is not having a mental illness. The shame is having one and not seeking treatment and not getting better and not being able to be the whole wonderful person that you're meant to be, and that you're impaired by something in your brain health. And why can't we look at our brain as the same as any of our other organs? Yes, it's more mystifying. It's sort of the last frontier of medical research, understanding it. But it's still is an organ that can have its dysfunctions, and be sympathetic to people as equally as you would when someone gets told they're going to have diabetes and going to be taking insulin for the rest of their life. When someone says to you, I'm bipolar and I'm going to be taking medication for the rest of life, don't mock them. Say, yay, good for you, because you're taking hold of your life. You're taking hold of your problem. We all have problems. We are all flawed. That was a shock to me to find out that I wasn't perfect.
Margaret, not you.
Surely
not.
And you asked me at the beginning, how come it took so long? It was me. I was in a prison, as the Doors sang, the prison of my own device. I would not accept that I had a mental illness. I thought I could get through it all by myself. It was just my life was so high and low. Everything. I had every rationale and reason blaming everybody else, and that's what people who have an untreated mental illness will do, and particularly ones who are still very angry about their condition. They'll blame everybody else. Your marriage, 90% of marriages bipolar, where one spouse is bipolar, untreated, fail. I have 2 marriages that failed because of the roller coaster of emotions that I had led my poor Libra balanced husband.
I know. Well, you look at this and you think, you know, that again we talk about 1 in 5 people suffering from a mental illness in this country, and then the number that's even way more massive who are living with them and caring for them and dealing with them. And
it's
who's talking about
damage.
it? But I mean, if someone did your husband say, you know, was there a support group for, whoa, you know, what's it like living with bipolar? They need that. People who are caring for schizophrenics and it's an enormously difficult situation.
And what I have to do every single day,
it's your kid.
Bipolar is all a question of balance. And so if you want to be as drug-free as you can get with this conditions, because all of the drugs have side effects, and the biggest side effect, and everybody will say it, but I'm so creative in my manic stage, and you're going to take that away from me. Yeah, you are. Yeah, it does. There's no question. It puts a ceiling. It brings you down, and and stops you from being too high and brings you up from being too low and puts you in a nice place where you can be a whole contributing normal human being. Well, we wouldn't have had a Van Gogh's paintings. We wouldn't have had half of the creative work in the world if all of these people had been taking their Prozac and their strong Seroquel every
having
day.
said that, one of my very favorite interviews I ever did was with Leonard Cohen. And I said to him, this was a while ago, you've been suffering depression your whole life, yes. And he said, I've treated it with Prozac, alcohol, Buddhism, sex, whatever.
Me too, all
And
of the above.
you and Leonard seem to have a lot in common.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, he said he saw his art as a victory over suffering,
Yes.
not as a result of suffering. And he also said, which I always
agree with
love.
that. Whatever it comes, it's art, though, isn't it?
But he did say that the best thing he ever wrote was that line from Anthem, that song where he says, ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything.
Like.
That's how the light gets in. And he said, I think I nailed it.
Yeah, he did nail it, because it is the light. That is the light, the crack where the light comes in. And it is in our cracks and in our flaws that we become unique and beautiful and not the same. And
but
so
then
the
how do
only
you
thing I
communicate
worry
that
about,
to children, though, Margaret?
So this is where my concern. I'm working with Dr. Alan Young out at UBC, in the Department of Psychiatry, and he's working on bipolar in children, and I've learned a lot from him. One of the problems, he's a British psychiatrist and now Canadian, but the Americans are throwing drugs at the children who are now diagnosing bipolar, which is good, because when they used to diagnose bipolar children in their manic phase anyway as being attention deficit and give them Ritalin, which is only more stimulation, which wasn't really the solution for those children, and the depression sort of ignoring it. And so now there is a reality of it. We really need to work at it through diet and exercise and proper play. And I mean real play, imaginative play, not play like this. I mean, a few hours of that, but not this. Real outdoors. And I know we're afraid to let our children outdoors, but what a shame. Mm-hmm. The world that's out there for children, if they are allowed to be in it and play in nature. Anyway, it was an important part of my childhood. I did have someone flash me once. Who doesn't? I mean,
I did. It was when I was hitchhiking down Yonge Street going to Ryerson on a daily basis.
So there's always been pedophiles.
My daughter were hitchhiking on Yonge Street, I'd be
flashers,
disturbed.
And we should trust that our children can have some play.
Okay, here's a question. What kind of impact does stigma have?
I think it comes out of ignorance. Stigma is not being informed and educated. It's being... and it comes out of ignorance, and the only way to get rid of it is with education and people becoming aware that how wrong it is just to shut off a whole population of people because they have a flaw that you perceive as a character flaw, when in fact it's just a physical, mental effect. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen changes, huge changes in how we see AIDS. I mean, so many things,
there are big changes
cancer, and there are changes coming in mental health.
Yeah.
I know that, I mean, there are so many people that have taken leadership roles, and I know, CAMH that I'm involved in. I'm involved in something called
support all across the country as well.
Canada Post Foundation for Mental Health as well, which is...
Great West Life, the insurance company, has the most remarkable website, greatwestlife.com, their virtual mental health website. I can get papers from psychiatrists at Mayo Clinic through it. I mean, it's just an absolutely open, beautiful website to help people understand mental illness and to get early help, how to get early help. Of course, the bottom line, why is Great West Life, the big insurance company, doing this? The bottom line, it's a huge cost to our economy to have people who stay depressed, who stay in a rut where they can't function, where they're not functioning because of a mental illness that they're too afraid to admit that they have. Don't call it mental illness, call it your brain health.
Well, actually, Bill Wilkerson, I was on a panel with just 2 days ago talking about mental health and workplace issues. He felt it would be a great leap forward if we stopped saying mental illness, when we start breaking it down into, even just saying schizophrenia, panic and anxiety disorders.
Even labels are distressing. Of course, there's some that are absolutely clear what they are, and some that are not so clear. There may be a scattering of different issues in yours. Just talk about having a balanced, functioning, happy brain that is clear and thinks clearly. When you're manic and when you're depressed, you're not thinking clearly. You're not, and the worst thing that happens, and it happens again and again and again, it certainly happened to me, denial. You just will not get help. You will not accept that you need help. I'm not mentally ill. You're mentally ill if you think I'm mentally ill.
So hard. Well, this is such a hard thing for parents.
50% of recovery, apparently, is in accepting your diagnosis. The doctor says, then you're on your way to find. I would have done anything. He thought I was so compliant. When I had my complete breakdown after Michelle and Pierre's death, I totally lost my mind. Complete madness. Totally hospitalized. Had to start from absolutely the ground up to get well again. And the whole essence of it was balance, was just making hard choices that would lead to a balanced lifestyle, getting my serotonin out of food and exercise. I got a personal trainer. I hate going to the gym. I have spent so much wasted money on those
You look awesome.
No, I'm buff but I'm only buff because it makes me feel so good.
Yeah.
And it's all about getting your metabolism. And I dieted. I got put on so much weight at different times, up and down, and I dieted, and how distressing diets are in every way, to the family, to you, to your friends, everyone. No dieting. Just find out how to get your metabolism going, how to get that energy so that you can function at high speed. Well, not high speed. High speed's fun.
Speaking just to the stigma issue, I remember when I took my first tour of CAMH down on Queen Street, which they are transforming, as you know, and we happily accept donations. Kelly Meehan is over here with a large purse. But when I went through, and I mean, the old buildings are an abomination. And then you find out there is no gift shop. This is a hospital with 600 beds. That's more than sick kids. It's huge. No gift shop because there's no economic model. Nobody comes to visit. Nobody buys gifts for all the people who are staying in there who probably are feeling worse than most people in any hospital. And I was part of a campaign last Christmas called Gifts of Light, which was a fundraising thing. Catherine and I did a lot of TV interviews and et cetera, just talking, trying to get money so that everybody in CAMH would get a gift last Christmas. Bathrobe, a blanket, a pair of slippers. And I went to the mood and anxiety unit one day and I was delivering some of these. The staff did an amazing job. But that was trying to reduce stigma and also to reach out and say, as Catherine said, it's like a hug, because the most important thing, and she would say this too, is I've learned to try and get better at dealing with her. She realizes this is for life, and it's sort of depressing for her to think, am I always going to be this? I'll see her face go flat. Sometimes she gets a little rigid, and she's just getting a bit panicky, she'll say. Or I'll phone her and she's very weepy. And I mean, instead of now just going, sing a happy song or whatever, you might have thought, come here, come see me, or I'll come to you. We just sit. She just wants to be held. She wants to know people will be there. She doesn't want to think that, oh my gosh, they'll get sick of me. They'll get tired of this. They'll get fed up with my behavior. No one will want to marry me. No one will want to be my friend for long term because, every once in a while I dip down and I can't do anything about it. And I don't want to have to feel, guilty or ashamed because of that. But that's the fear, that people won't support you.
It isolates you and it marginalizes you as you go deeper and deeper into depression. You know that you're no fun. You are no fun. You haven't got the ability to laugh. Nothing's funny. You're not getting enough serotonin. You have no delight. And so you know that you're a bore and a party pooper. So you stop going out and you stop accepting invitations. And then you think, well, I probably can't work either. And you stop. And you get deeper and deeper into this hole. And it gets darker and darker and lonelier and lonelier. And then
what you hear is that you don't
and you reach crisis,
don't think you
which
can
means
get out.
Hospitalization. Yeah. And there's nothing nice about being in a psychiatric ward, nothing, except the good people who are in there helping you. But it's pretty frightening for anybody, I think.
Here's a question. How valuable do you think Canadian youth services are to children, and what can a community do to help identify mental issues like anxiety in children? Certainly suicide prevention is one of those things. Aboriginal kids are certainly at crisis. I know the ministers here, I mean, they're preparing, there was a great paper done about Canadian, kids and identifying mental health as one of the critical 3 issues to be dealt with, and that the Ontario government's been looking into that. Having said that, I think Canada's the only country in the G8 that doesn't have a mental health strategy.
We should be so ashamed. So ashamed. Now, we have a great mental health commission. Michael Kirby, the senator, is the head of it, and it's just gathering information all across the country. It's wonderful. I just hope that we have a government in place when it's finished that will act on the recommendations, because it's just to find out what's wrong and do nothing about it. And we know what's wrong.
We know what's wrong. We know the numbers are enormous. We know, as I said, that 80% of children. Where's my stat? I got to get this right. As my husband said, for journalists, you get all your facts wrong. I think he's talking about financial ones, so I hope that with money. 80% of all psychiatric disorders emerge in adolescence, and they're the most common illness that begins at that age. It's estimated that 70% of childhood mental illness cases can be solved with early diagnosis and intervention. But the issue is so much that of access and treatment.
Yeah.
And so many people, because of the posters even, have called me, how do I get help? Where do I get help?
I think we just need to have someone help us navigate the maze that is our healthcare system when it involves our children and or our friends' children or ourselves. You have to become an advocate. You have to be informed. You have to go on government websites. You have to find out. Canadian Mental Health Association, of course, there's 165 of them across the country. Great grassroots first door to go through and say, what am I going to do?
I need help.
I need help, or my daughter needs help, or my friend needs help. Somebody, they can start. Your family
Suicide,
doctor. Yeah.
the leading cause of death in adolescence. But the attempts outnumber completed 4-to-1. So I mean, there is
crying for help, and again,
there.
it comes down to emotional intelligence. We have to raise our children with empathy. That wonderful Mary Gordon and her work, and she started with Roots of Empathy, and now I see she's got Seeds of Empathy. And it's raising children by not putting an expectation on them of how you want them to grow up and be. My son the doctor, my son the lawyer.
My son the politician.
My son the future prime minister. Yeah, right. Over my cold dead body.
I don't think Justin has any pressure on him at all.
None. No, it's my daughter who you should be looking at.
And then your fabulous baby son, who you say
yes, no, but
treasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have to identify early on the little characters and the flaws, we don't call them flaws in our family, we call them shortcomings that they have, and help guide them as parents through the tumultuous emotions, the tumultuous bullying, rejection, all the things that are going to happen to children. They are going to be knocked down. You can't protect them from none of us can be protected from being knocked down by life, by somebody, somewhere, sometime. It's how we get up again that is the measure of how successful our lives will be. And many of us can't get up on our own and don't even know where to start to get back on our feet after life has knocked us down.
No, you need help.
You need help, and reaching out for help. And I think youth services, I think any organization that has a compassionate mandate is so necessary and so valuable.
And I should just put in a plug. The Canada Post Foundation for Mental Health has just raised $1 million this year. The website's up. And for frontline organizations, that's what that one's all about getting out into communities, small communities, and giving the first access point. So people can apply for those grants. If anybody in this room is interested in that, there's $1 million up to be spent this year to try and get services out there. And to hear Moya Green, the president of Canada Post, who's just such a strong advocate, talking about our share healthcare and people who care about this issue, who are touched by it, which is almost everybody, marching out of their homes and all screaming our share healthcare, is quite something.
Well, my hat's off to James Bettleman. What he did is an extraordinary proactive response, because we all think a suicide a week in our Aboriginal communities? And what did he do? He said, well, we've got to give those children hope. And trucks and fire trucks and police cars just drove up 1 million books up beyond, what do they say, where the roads don't go, or whatever, forest, whatever. Because he thought if the children at least could read books, It would open up a world of hope to them. It would open up a world of possibility. They might think of themselves in a different way than having no hope, just nothing but despair and a cycle of poverty that isn't going to end. And of course, the way the cycle of poverty is ending is with education and is with the children having motivation and hope. But when there is none, and books are such an important part and it cannot be underestimated. I know that's why another reason that I was had a pretty happy, healthy childhood is that I read voraciously all the time, just left and escaped into this extraordinary world. Proactive in your community, providing the tools so people can get on.
James Bartleman, I mean, that is his most serious concern, are Aboriginal youth and suicide.
But this is a real positive approach, and just a simple thing as use books. It's just excellent.
We've got a question from the youth representative. So she asks, how can we as youth leaders explain to teachers and parents that mental health is not a disease and we as youth have a lot of potential?
But there is mental illness. It is a disease. It is a health concern, our mental health as much as our physical health, as much as our spiritual health. They're all part of our concern. So what we have to do is put value on our emotional state as much as we put value on our intellectual state. We may be very, very competent intellectually and have no ability to deal with life and as Pierre called it, the vicissitudes of daily living, the ups and downs. Well, I think that a kind of a progressive approach, a proactive approach from everybody is and mental health is part of physical health, and people in the workplace should be attuned to people and not push them away because they're a sad, boring, irritating human being, but say, hey, what's happening to you? Do you need some help? Would you like me to try and find someone for you to talk to?
Speak openly. I mean, you hear that so often. People will say, I wish people had said,
what's
how are
really
you?
pinching
or when
you?
I came back to work, I wish people had said, I mean, if someone were hit by a bus, you'd send the flowers and all go and visit and keep in touch. If someone jumped under the bus,
watch for you,
they wouldn't even talk to you. They look the other way. They think this is so embarrassing. I'm not even going to ask. No one will talk about it. And I think the important message to communicate about kids is that it is a crisis. And if it goes untreated, it can lead, as you will say, to such a wasted life, perhaps suicide, death, but just an unhappy, less productive life, and that intervention can help.
You're impaired from functioning at being the best you can be. I'm not saying the best of everybody, but just the best that you can be, and that's all we can expect of ourselves or our children or our friends, is just to be the best that you can be. Well, how can you be the best if you've got really bad judgment and really are not seeing life clearly, or you've got a real chemical imbalance, and if you're just so stressed at the idea of having to walk out your front door?
Well, we'll, I think, wrap it up there, would you like to leave with one final message?
You do that.
Well, I think I was just trying to do that myself, saying that this is something that we can't afford to waste these lives. And I mean, everybody in this room, I think, obviously knows these issues, some particularly more than others. The minister in charge of this for the government of Ontario is here, and people who are advocating for all sorts of groups understand this. But I think we know we've still fallen down, that we're still failing our kids, and that there's so much more we still have to do in terms of being open and accessible about this and having a more effective strategy.
I just have one thing to add.
I knew you would.
From Leonard to Leonard. I've had the occasion, very happily, of being able to meet with the Dalai Lama through my son, Sasha. He was to have a private meeting with him after some conference he was at, and the Dalai Lama's aide called. Sasha and I were having dinner and said, the Dalai Lama would like to have an hour-long conversation with you tomorrow morning. Can I bring my mom? Anyway, I had a question for the Dalai Lama, and I asked him about happiness. I said, we all want it, pursuit of happiness. We all want personal happiness. We want, is happiness possible? Is that something that we can? He said, if you are warm-hearted and compassionate, you will be happy. And that is the truth. If you're willing to give out, to step one foot forward, and to help somebody who you see is suffering, your happiness scale goes right up. And of course, love is all there is. So warm-hearted, it goes without saying, you get what you give. But I'll conclude on that one.
I thought you might say life is a bowl of cherries or something.
No,
No,
yeah,
that was just a bad joke.
Yeah, it is.
Spectacular man. That's actually a lovely story. We can go.
She's saying
I would like to thank our two most accomplished guests for being here with us today. And I also want to thank all of you, our guests and members, for coming to hear them and their very important message. It's hard not to reflect on the fragility of life when instead of seeing our friend Sylvia here with us today saying the thank you, we are instead celebrating her life next Monday. So these thanks come on her behalf as well. Margaret and Valerie, by shining a light on your personal struggles, you in turn provide enlightenment for all of us. Your discussion today moves these critical issues out of the closet and into the sunshine. JFK said, "Children are the world's most valuable resource and its best hope for the future." Thank you both for sharing your passion and your ideas to move us to needed action to preserve that future. And please don't stop. We need to continue to hear your voices. On behalf of the combined meeting of the Empire and Canadian Clubs, I would like to thank Margaret Trudeau and Valerie Pringle for speaking with us here today during Children's Mental Health Week. This lunch is being broadcast on Rogers TV. I want to thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you again for lunch. This meeting is adjourned.